I think right now we are all taking a step back to try to understand different perspectives. So as coaches, how do you help your players see different perspectives? How do you guys help them understand each other more?
I think we kind of already hit on it. It's just, the process of becoming a family, and the process is where you gain all that. I mean, I know when I first got to Chapel Hill, when you come in and you bring one goal, one idea, and you start changing the culture, you just see people gravitating towards each other and closing that gap of not being a family. I think, you know, you got kids are they're gonna see fake. They're gonna see right through the coaches that are real and the coaches that are fake, and the coaches that sincerely care about them and not just what they're going to do on the field. And I think, as coaches, I mean, these other guys may say something too, but as a head coach and athletic director, I got to get the right coaches in place, coaches that are going to be extensions of me and my philosophy and my beliefs. And then those coaches are going to go take those philosophies to the position coaches or the sports that they coach. I think when you put that goal out there and you become a team, it's not black, white, Hispanic, Asian. We're Bulldogs. And our enemy next year is the Eagles, Coach Cochran. We're
Yes,
the
sir.
Bulldogs, and our enemy is the Eagles next year. I'm just kidding. But, I think we come together as a team because of all the stuff like we've talked about that these guys go through on the daily. Like they spend more time with us and each other than they do with their own families. And we say that as coaches all the time. We tell our teams we spend as much time or more time with you guys than we do our own family. So, and what Coach Kincaid said, relationships. Just being able to build relationships. And I tell people all the time when they ask me advice, the number one thing I look for when I'm hiring a coach is people skills. X's and O's, no, people skills. How do they deal with people, whether it be coaches on our staff or our kids? How do what's their people skills like? And I just try to hire people that love people.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it is a process. It takes time, but it's to go along what Coach Rick said. You got to love people. As far as kids go, you've got to challenge them to talk to each other. Like to find out about that next guy. As we were talking about earlier, I don't remember who said it, but as far as the locker room, to learn about the guy 3 lockers down from you, at some point there has to be a conversation, and you've got to get in some, a little bit of depth there to find out about people. And that's not easy for a teenager to do necessarily, but that's something that, we try to challenge our guys to do, just to communicate. Obviously I challenge our coaches to do that. You gotta get to know these young men, because if not, if you if you don't know them, it's hard to know when they're struggling. But if you do, if you've had those in-depth conversations and you really know them, you're going to know, hey, something's up with so and so. I need to check on this dude. But it's not as easy. It's not as easy as what I'm sitting here saying. It does. It's what Coach Reardon said. It takes time.
I know you guys aren't just coaches, but you're also fathers. Coach Cochran, I know you and your wife, Lindsay, recently adopted an African-American son, and I'm sure this has given you some unique perspective. Would you mind sharing with us what you're learning during this time, and what have the conversations with you and Lindsay been like recently?
Yeah, it's an absolute, he is an absolute blessing. Adoption is awesome. And it's really cool, just the platform that God's given us, because people do notice that. Number one, people notice adoption, but they also notice when we're walking, through a grocery store or at church or walking the trail, that we're 2 white people and we've got an African-American son, and they think he's cute and all that, but and he's a blessing, to us. But it's given us a different perspective, and we've had some it's been a hard week, honestly, because my wife, I mean, she's passionate, and we both are about him, just like any parent would be. But it's given us a different perspective. As far, I'll speak for myself. As far as standing up for African Americans, like that's where it's really worked on my heart, because I've always, I mean, with my players, other coaches that I've worked with. I mean, I've always loved black people, but at this point now it hits a little bit closer to home, and it's helped me to know, hey, you can't just say, I love the black kids that I get to coach, and I mean, that's great, that's fine, nothing wrong with that, but it's challenged me, I guess, to take a step further and really, stick my neck out there, I guess, just to say, you know what, I support African Americans. I do see injustice in our society more so now than ever before. I see that, and it's because if that's my son in Coach Kincaid was talking about it. He's got a son that's a freshman in college. Well, it'll be here, before I know it, when Kobe Cochran's in college, and that's something that's eye opening, because I'll have to have that same conversation with him, and I love him more than anything. So I want him to be safe. I want him to be protected. We'll do whatever we can to help him do that, but I'll have to educate him. So 100%, this is truly opened my eyes and given me a different perspective as far as, the Black Lives Matter stuff.
If I can just add to that as I'm sitting here thinking, and we talk about, our off-season slogan this year was "Man in the Mirror," and when nothing's going on and everything seems like it's rolling smoothly, you don't think about those things. And then what happens over the last, with Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, and those things are thrown in our face. And me as a white coach, and I have a son, and I'm calling and talking to all my brothers that have been on my staff. Coach Blaylock, Coach Nash, Coach Johnson, Coach Strange, and it hurts me to know that when they send their son out the front door, they have a whole different thought process than I have to have. And with Coach Kincaid and Coach Cochran, and just hearing that makes me sad. And all I can do is tell them, hey, I'm here for you, and I'm sorry, and I love you. And it hurts my heart to know that I can send my son Jonah through the front door, and I don't have and I'm a overbearing, overprotective parent, and I have worries, but I don't have the same worries as Coach Cochran, as Coach Kincaid, and you don't have to raise your son differently, and it just makes me sad. It shouldn't be that way, and it doesn't have to be that way. But when I think about, and I see Coach Johnson, my basketball coach, with his nephew Tyson that he's raising, with his son Derek, and all my coaches that are like my family, my brothers, and their kids, I don't see them any differently than I see Jonah. And Jonah is grown up with these guys, and he doesn't see them any differently. To know that maybe one of these days it's one of those guys that are like my own sons, and my players. Like maybe George Floyd is a former Texas high school football player. He could have been one of the guys in one of our locker rooms that we coached every day and love like our own son, like we say we do. It just hurts my heart that this goes on in the world, and just conversations like this. How do we fix it? How do we go about it? I think we just one person at a time, one person in our program at a time, and hopefully, one of these days this will be gone and we won't have to worry about it.
I'd love to gather y'all's final thoughts. In terms of moving forward overall, how do you think this time will change and impact our world down the road?
I think we're already improving. Even going through it. We're going through the fire right now. I
Mm.
mean, you put iron in the fire, you melt it down, and you gotta let it cool off and shape it, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's what America is going through right now. And not only with the COVID, now with the social unrest and the George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery situations, I think it's kind of doubled up. It got two furnaces going at one time. So I think we're going to bounce back. America always does bounce back, and it's going to bring us closer together. And it's going to be a challenge, and it's still challenging as the day goes on. And each one of these men, Coach Reard and Coach Cochran just said, they're of a different skin color than I am, but when men like them speak up, they see the difference, they know the difference, and they true about it. It's just not lip service, and their words are put into action, and our country is going to be so much better. We're not going to be able to recognize we will be able to recognize what we come to, but it's going to be such a drastic difference. I appreciate these two men and what they said today. And I know other men that are white, that are Hispanic, and other races that feel the same way as them, and they do put actions and they put their words in action. And there's no doubt in my mind that I believe that we'll be better behind this.
I'd like to say, first of all, Tina, thank you for putting this together. It's an honor. It truly is an honor to get to do this. Not an easy topic, as you and I have talked about, but it's one that I'm honored to get to be a part of this with you and then these other three men. And I would say, as we started off, we're going to be better. America's going to be better. It's us chipping away at it a little at a time, day by day. And I heard another one of our coaches, or I saw it on Twitter, Kerry Lane, talking about the actions. It's about our actions. It's how I coach my young men, and how we handle these relationships, whether it's a fellow coach that's a different color, or a player, and it's not necessarily something that we have to put on social media. That's just one small step, but I think it's on a daily basis, and I think it's opened our eyes, and so now it's about us checking on each other, not letting this I guess fall on deaf ears, in a month, once everything hopefully settles down a little bit. Now we have to continue to do things that we've been doing,
Amen.
and that's something that, we say we want to do, but when we get into this football season and things get going, it's truly slowing down, taking the time to, pull one of those guys in our office and say, hey, how are you doing with all that? And just having that conversation, continuing to challenge our teams to, hey, check on each other, love one another, forget about yourself, put somebody in front of you, those types of things. And, in the end, and I'll get to preaching, kind of like Coach Reardon's pregame, but love is the answer. I mean, it boils down to that. And really, it boils down to Jesus is the answer. And that was his message all along, was love.
I think that's the blessing of East Texas, and I'm glad to be back in East Texas. You can talk about Jesus. You can talk about biblical principles and how they guide your life and make it better in every aspect, and how you can win and be successful with men leading your programs like the guys that are on this Zoom call. Every one of them are successful in their own right, and they do it the right way. And I think that's what's important, is you got men leading programs and leading our youth and doing it the right way. And just the education through conversation. I know I've said that several times, is I mean, how are you going to know if you don't talk about it?
Yeah.
How are we going to get better if me, Coach Cochran, Coach Kincaid, and Coach Lewis don't get on this Zoom conference and talk about it? You know, open and honest, and we may not all agree on everything, you know, but our hearts are right. And, you know, I think that's what we got to do. There's got to be a heart check, and people got to understand right is right and wrong is wrong. There's no way that you can see some of these things going on and not know it's wrong.
Right.
And if you do, you need to look yourself in the mirror and do a heart check. You know? Just like God uses us, Satan is using people to divide, to seek and destroy. You know, and if we're not unified, we're going to be easily taken down. You know, just like we preach to our teams. In all aspects, this world is one big team, and it's got to come together.
You know, we're going to bounce back strong. As every coach has said, you know, and Coach Kincaid, you know, we just got to speak the truth. Let our words and action be nothing but the truth, and continue to, you know, uplift our players every day and just uplift the people that surround us. And, you know, you might not understand, you know, certain things or different situations, but, you know, if you just speak positives into different people every day, and I got a bracelet that I wear every day to say beat yesterday. So I might have struggled with a situation on yesterday, or somebody else might have struggled with something and just don't understand it, but we just got to, you know, give them something positive